Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 524 on Tuesday, the 9th of May, 2023. Hello, I'm Alan. And yes, for hopefully the last week, I mean, fingers are crossed here, then I'm on my own. His Lordship is getting there. He sent me an audio clip yesterday just to prove that he wasn't faking it. And you know when you go to when you see this footage on TV of an Elvis convention and there are some Elvis impersonators who are just too Elvis? Bear with me on this. This was like the equivalent, but at a Whispering Bob Harris convention. So he's getting there, but he's still very much at the whispery stage. Next week, if you're really lucky, he'll be at the Mariella Frostrup sexiness stage. But I think it's going to probably take more than just an elevating coffee sickness to actually do that. And the great thing is he's watching and he's sending me messages as we go along, so I can just see his reaction to that, and you don't, and I'm not going to repeat it, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, enough faffing about. This week there's more Dieselgate, there are more new car registration figures, and there is probably very soon going to be even less arrival. But let's get on with it and get straight into the follow-up. We talked on the 4th of April about former Audi CEO Rupert Stadler and the fact that the judge was telling him he really had to make a full confession or go to jail. Well, they've decided that he's going to make a full confession. In return for making a full confession about his role in Dieselgate, he will get a suspended sentence and a payment of and have to make a payment of $1.1 million. He will not receive it. So yes, in return for that, he'll get a suspended sentence rather than having to go to jail for 1.5 to 2 years. Audi has declined to comment, by the way, saying it wasn't party to the trial, although I bet it was watching it like hawks. Other people who've been on trial with Stadler, as we said before, Wolfgang Hatz, former head engine development at Audi, who then went on to become Volkswagen Group's top engineer, and the ex-diesel engine manager Giovanni Pamio. And there's one last former engineer who turned state witness and is named only as Henning L. So yes, that probably, I don't know. Well, I'm sure we'll find out that I'm sure the confession will be along very shortly. But until then, I'd love to say I think that marks an end to this chapter of Dieselgate. I think once the confession comes out, it will be. I don't think it'll be the end. I don't think we'll see the end for quite some time. One other piece of follow-up arrival. They put out a statement the other week that accompanied a 6K report form about all about their assets and sort of tax-related, financial-related stuff. It said the strange thing in there was basically it says, what's in here might not. We apologise for the delay in this. Obviously, it was meant at the end of December. Yeah, we don't really have any people left to do it. We don't have enough people to do this and do the fundraising we need at the same time. So yeah, it's a bit late, and also we're not very good at our internal controls over financial reporting. So yeah, we'll sort it out, but we don't really have anyone to do it right at the minute. Really quite strange, really highly unusual, but I'm glad we don't see tech companies firing people all willy-nilly and not thinking about the consequences of that, even a short distance down the line. Just because they're not doing something which appears on your desk every day does not mean that they're not doing anything valuable or useful for the health and well-being of the company. Anyway, enough lecturing from me. Let's head into new news. And a first story, of course, are the SMMT new car registration figures for April 2023. SMMT is saying new car market records 9th consecutive month of growth, up 11.6%. And it is. It's up 11.6% on the equivalent month last year. It's up way up on the year before, still down 17.4%. On 2019 figures. So battery electric vehicles taking up a significant market share these days, especially when you look at it by the sort of Tristan Young fuel you put into the car analysis. Obviously, you can find more of his work over at Broker News. So essentially, the breakdown is petrol makes up 70%, near as darn it, of vehicles of new cars registered. Battery electric vehicles 15.43%, diesel a mere 8.18%, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles 6.43%. In total, that makes 627,250 vehicles. So the top 10. Number 10, the Mini 2304. Number 9, the MGZS 2335. Goodness me. Number 8, the Ford Fiesta. Only one registration ahead of the MGZS. Number 7, the Volkswagen T-Roc. Number 6, the Nissan Qashqai. Number 5, the Audi A3. Number 4, the Hyundai Tucson. Number 3, the Kia Sportage. Number 2, the Vauxhall Corsa. And number 1, the heir to the Fiesta's crown, I think, the Ford Puma 3,570. Not a big spread. Remember, April's not generally a very big month for new car registrations because, of course, everybody sort of tries to squeeze it all into March so they can get the new registration figure. Year to date, the very top is the Vauxhall Corsa with 14,034. Number 2 is the Nissan Qashqai. Number 3 is the Ford Puma at 13,128. Spreadsheet of doom very quickly. Not a lot of doom there. Not a huge amount. I mean, most companies are up by a few percent. There's a couple that are down a smidgen, but not an awful lot. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's not very interesting. But especially when it's just one person doing it. But who are the big movers and shakers? Is the big increase of the month is Tesla. Last April they registered 118 vehicles. This April they registered 1,813. So they're up 1,400%. But that doesn't really mean much because the Tesla up and down bouncing, which has happened for the last few years. It's sort of like it's like a sine wave. Essentially, depends when the boats come in. Other big markers and big ups: Cupra, DS, MG's up 85%, Polestar, obviously some of the smaller brands, but Volkswagen up 60%, for example. So there seems to be a bit of a relief in some of the supply chain issues that were still hampering them last year. Similarly, Porsche up 74%, Audi up a mere 15%. Okay, let's move on. And yes, we're back to Volkswagen again. So one of the big pieces of Volkswagen news that came out just the other day is that Volkswagen is to clear and cull all but one of the executive board members at CARIAD. So CARIAD, remember, I'm sure you know, is the software division of Volkswagen. It's having all sorts of issues, discovering that software is quite hard, really. That's delaying entire models, including the Porsche e-Macan and the Audi Q6 e-tron. And so they're going to have a culling of the board. All but one, and the one person who's going to survive is the unit's head of personnel. Fair enough. It seems a bit rough, but on the other hand, the people who are on the board are probably the people that he didn't have a say in appointing. So yes, person who's planned to take over is Peter Bosch, who's head of engineering, I think. I don't have it in front of me. Engineering, I think, at Bentley. So this is where he's moving to. So good luck to him. I mean, this is, pardon me, head of production at Bentley. This is a poison chalice. I mean, if they can make this work, then you'll be a hero. But, you know, I saw a thing during the week, and it was someone commenting that it was probably easier now for a software company to become a car manufacturer than it is for a car manufacturer to write software. And I think that might be, there's a couple of things in there. I think one is culturally, there's a different culture around from software companies compared to actual physical manufacturing, and also the fact that it's much easier to get help with the physical stuff. The physical stuff can be controlled by the software, but but the software can't be controlled by the physical stuff. So, I mean, you can go, if you're a software company, you can go along, you can hire in expertise around the mechanics. You can go to Ricardo, you can go to Steyr, you can go to any of these companies. And you can get help with all that stuff, but the knowledge of software, the way software works and stuff is very, very different. But I think from that end, it's probably easier to come from there into manufacturing. There are more tangibles in physical manufacturing than there are in software creation. And I think that if you're used to those physical tangibles, then I think it's a far bigger jump to go the other way. I think that was a lot of consultancy waffle just there, but never mind. I'm going to pretend it made perfect sense, just like just about everybody else does. But no, I do think there's a mindset thing. It's not just a knowledge thing, it's a mindset thing. But supposedly there's 2 software experts, possibly from outside Volkswagen, who will be joining Peter Bosch. So that is a change. Hopefully it's enough, because he seems like a nice guy, and it would be a shame to see CARIAD bump him off in the way that it's essentially bumped off the last two Volkswagen CEOs. So yeah, definitely Volkswagen's big problem child right at the minute. Speaking of people getting help with EVs, Aston Martin has recruited a couple of people from both Ferrari and Rimac to strengthen the management team. So Paul Thomas is going to be the battery electric vehicle chief engineer, which also covers plug-in hybrid vehicles. That's a newly created position for him. Deliveries of the Valhalla plug-in hybrid supercar will start next year. Full electric car 2025, and he is ex Rimac up until February 2022. The other person who's been appointed is the Chief Industrial Officer, who will oversee all of the manufacturing operations, and he is Vincenzo Regazzoni. He was Chief Manufacturing Officer at Ferrari up until 2022, and he's been doing consultancy and advisory work for Aston Martin since then. Other person that's joining Aston Martin is Giorgio Lasagni. He's going to be Chief Procurement Officer. And again, he worked for Ferrari for 7 years, dropped out of the automotive industry in 2007, and he actually joined Aston Martin in January. So quite serious senior appointments there to oversee, to tweak, to transform both manufacturing and also sourcing the parts for manufacturing. Because, of course, if you don't have the bits, you can't build anything. Other news from UK-based manufacturing, automotive manufacturers. London Electric Vehicle Company, yes, makers of the black cab, they are going to move mainstream. By mainstream, that means more than just black cab-based cabs and vans. They're going to launch a range of vans and MPVs in the future. So they've got a new platform that they've developed. It's called SOA. And they're going to use that as a basis for a bunch of F-segment models. Now, I have trouble imagining what F-segment looks like. So Autocar, obviously story-linked in the show notes, saying it's above the Citroën E-Space Tourer and the Volkswagen Multivan. So it's a little bit bigger than the sort of Caravelle size. It's essentially biggest Vito to smallest Sprinter type size zone. The whole idea of this platform is flexibility. So it will allow for vehicles to say between 4.86 meters and 5.95 meters long, which is alarmingly specific. So I imagine that's a round number of feet, with wheelbases from 3 to 3.88 meters. Points out here that 3.8 meters is larger than a standard size Sprinter. So that's really quite a large van. Passenger-based vehicles will have air suspension. Freight goods vehicles will probably have leaf springs at the rear instead of the multi-link. So this is interesting. It's interesting on a couple of levels to me. I mean, by the way, all of these are going to be electric. There's going to be variants up to 536 horsepower with a ridiculous 0 to 62 time. Battery packs from from 226 miles of range to 359, although not if you're doing 0 to 62s at the same speed as sports cars. Everything's going to have a heat pump, charging 10 to 80% to take 30 minutes, blah, 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 blah. Lots of really good stuff there. Why I think this is interesting is this will give Geely and LEVC a range of commercial vehicles from the taxi-based vans, the TX-based vans up the way. This will give a one-stop shop for urban battery electric vehicles. Battery electric commercial vehicles, and also if you're going into, and also with the taxi and then the passenger vehicles here, then again for the chauffeur livery sort of style setup, even your Addison Lee style sort of posh minicabs, it's opening up that space because and that should be quite a market, not just in the UK, but I think right across Europe, Far East, I don't know. So I think it's interesting from that point of view. I'm not even going to go. There's a image that's been included, I guess, because there's a paucity of other images in the Autocar story, which shows sort of different levels of architecture from physical through to software and cloud, apps and services, which just fingernails down a blackboard for me. Showing that, we're not even going to go into that. I'm sure it's great and everything, but it's show me the integration when it works, huh? So yes, lots of things, lots of bullish claims being made there. We don't really know what anything looks like other than it's kind of shadowy, probably with a strip light around the front, and that's about that. But I think it's an interesting concept. I think it's going to be good to see just where that goes. One last story before Guilt Minute, and that's the Glasgow Low Emission Zone. I have not really seen this reported on much, and I've sort of seen a couple of things, and I've sort of side-eyed them and stepped away a little bit because I just couldn't find very much about it. But it's worth talking about. It comes into force on the 1st of June. And it will be the first zone in the UK to ban drivers of older, more polluting cars from entering the zone. Uses the same standards as London ULEZ and Bristol and Birmingham's clean air zones. But if you have a vehicle that's older than Euro 6 diesel or Euro 4 petrol, you won't be able to pay a fee to enter the zone. You will just be hit with a penalty charge. And if your vehicle is non-compliant, you'll be charged a penalty of £60, and that gets halved to a mere £30 if you pay within a fortnight. But that penalty will double for each subsequent offence, whether or not you paid the first one, up to a maximum of £480. If you're HGV or your bus driver, non-compliant vehicles, penalty cap £960. But in those cases, they will reset to £60 if you don't commit offence again within 90 days. It is only going to be very small. It is only going to cover about a square mile of the city centre, so it's not massive. To be honest, it's probably an area you could quite easily and would be much better walking through, even as it stands. And Glasgow has a subway system and all sorts of other things which probably completely and utterly skirt the square mile, I would imagine, as is the way. So, but yeah. For a long, long time, the big issue in Glasgow were the buses. As one colleague when we were doing some work up there said, it's why are they all coal-fired? And they really were. They really were pretty awful. They have, of course, improved that, and they'll have to now because they'll need to at least be running the new buses through this square mile and shoving all the older coal-fired ones out to the suburbs, which I'm sure is not really what's meant to happen. Yeah, the other thing that's worth mentioning, by the way, is that in Scotland, cars don't last as long as they do in England, generally. As much because rust and everything gets to them much sooner, longer winters, more salt on the roads, all these kind of things. So it's not as big a deal. They tend to be slightly newer cars. in Scotland than there are in England, just because the old ones don't really survive. So yes, we'll keep an eye on that, but it seems it's quite it sounds incredibly draconian, and then you realise it is only a small part of Glasgow that you wouldn't be driving through anyway, or at least not if you've got any common sense. But that takes us to Guilt Minute. So Guilt Minute, of course, that quick break in the show where we ask for a tad of financial support to keep the lights on and the hosting running. If you feel that Motoring Podcast is worth a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of patron include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We also have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. If you don't have any spare cash, we completely understand, then you can help us by following for free from a podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show in whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. If you've done all of that, and some of you do, so thanks very much, then the last thing you can do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues. That brings us to a new car news. Couple of things. It's kind of quite old car news. Obviously, it's bank holiday week here in the UK, so nobody released anything at all on Monday. Yes, 2023 Peugeot 2008 gets a new EV variant and a bit of a styling refresh. Honestly, it's pretty much blink and you'll miss it on the styling refresh. You'd have to park the old and the new beside each other before I could really tell the difference. But the E2008 has a larger 54 kilowatt hour battery. That should give it 250 miles of range and 153 brake horsepower. There's some other tweaks and twiddles, but really the all-electric powertrain one is the main one. It says it features a battery that's able to recharge at low speeds around town. I imagine that's just regen, like anyone else has. I think what's important, and hopefully the thing that they've really worked on with this new drivetrain, is the ability to predict the range that's available. That seems to be the biggest weakness anytime people have driven any of the I almost said the PSA cars, the Stellantis cars on this platform and with this drivetrain, is that it does seem to have real issues giving accurate range predictions and not just plunging wildly once you've set off. Obviously there's an increase in range, and that's good, but is there an increase in the ability to predict what the range is going to be? It's something that the Koreans, for example, are very good at. We talked about the troubles with CARIAD and Volkswagen. Even Volkswagen Group vehicles are pretty good at predicting the range. Anything that's based on the Stellantis platform seems to have fun challenges with range prediction. So hopefully, above anything else, I think what will attract people to this would actually be that improvement. I mean, it's the 2008. So it's a nice vehicle. I mean, they're expecting electric. Peugeot are expecting electric to be the second highest proportion of the sales split. So they're expecting 40% petrol, 38% electric, and a mere 22% hybrid. So yeah, I mean they've sold almost 700,000 since 2019. So it is a key model for Stellantis across most of its markets, certainly its Central European markets. The other piece of new car news we have is very much new old car news. Land Rover Works have released a new version, limited edition version of the Defender. So they have taken Defenders, a selection of, and they have essentially rebuilt and refurbished them, which means that they can sell them again, obviously, because they were originally registered in 2015, 2016. And what they've done is they've taken some 90s, they've fitted the V8 engine and some other tweaky upgrades, and they've made what I think is pretty much the perfect spec. The only thing that stops it being the perfect spec is that the air conditioner on the front of the engine obviously pushes it out, so it doesn't have what I think of as the proper flat Defender grille. It does have that slight snout, but in pale grey tweed interior, cream roof, and cream the high capacity wheels from the Defender 130. with the ones with the holes in around the edge, which I think are the nicest looking steels you can get on the Land Rover. And it is a beautiful, beautiful trim. If I had to have a Defender, someone to go out and spec a Defender, then it would end up pretty close to this. Maybe I would go for a dark green or something, but the interior, as far as the trim I would choose, would be very, very close to this. There is a fly in the ointment in all of this, and that is price. £230,000 for the 90, and another 15,000 if you want it in a 110. That's quite spicy. There was some debate about this on the socials, and I think whilst you can sit there and you can go, well, that's a ridiculous price, and it is a ridiculous price. Let's not beat about the bush. The people who are buying these, and the people who want these, they don't want them because they're their only transport. They're not for day to day. They're buying these in the same way as they would buy a piece of art. And I don't think that that's because they think they're going to, they're going to make loads of money as an investment and thing. I think you've got more money than even that if you're buying one of these. It's because you want it so you can look at it, so you can drive it once or twice a month, and so that you know that you've got the sort of ultimate, coolest version of the Defender, and the best, the best screwed together, the best trimmed, all these kind of things. I think that's really what it's all about. By the way, power figures, just in case you care, in case you're going to knock it off your list because of it. It puts out 399 brake horsepower, 380 pound-feet of torque. It'll do 0 to 62 in 5.6 seconds. That sounds terrifying, by the way. So, obviously, four-wheel drive, 8-speed ZF automatic gearbox, 2-speed transfer box as well, torque distributing center diff, live axles, though, and recirculating ball steering, so don't expect pinpoint accuracy around the Nürburgring. But no, it's lovely. I like it a lot as a thing to look at. It's gorgeous, and I'm sure it's hilarious away from the traffic lights as well. But goodness me, that price. But if you're paying for it, you feel that you're getting what you're paying for, and that is the ultimate expression, built by Land Rover, not customized, not anything else. It's an official model. Designer's mood board, very quickly. We talked about Caterham last week or the week before. It all rolls into one these days. And they've got that, and we talked about the factory expansion and all some of the other stuff that they're doing for their 50th anniversary. One of the things they're doing is they're hiring a new chief designer. Now, people in the past have joked that the easiest job in the world is to be the head designer at Porsche, because all you do is you get the 911, you make it a bit bigger and a little bit rounder. Caterham, probably even easier over the last 50 years. You get the Lotus 7. You occasionally tweak the shape of the wheels, of the wheel arches and wheel spats, and on one occasion you make it a little bit bigger. Well, Anthony Giannarelli, founder of Giannarelli Automotive, is their new chief designer. Previously, he boasts a career that includes jewelry, architecture, and yacht design. But he also built or designed and built his own model, the Design One, which is a fine-looking machine, by the way. And it's a modern sports car, but lots and lots of classic design cues. I mean, if you look at it, you can see bits and pieces of F40, of Cobra, of some early Lotus, Marcos, all sorts of inspiration in there, and I guess that's the kind of thing that he's that they're looking to bring on into Caterham. He's not joining the company properly. He'll be working as a consultant along with CEO Bob Leashley, but to try to shape a design language for future products beyond the existing 7 model range. Who remembers the Caterham 21? Anyone? No? Yeah, just me. But yes, very cool. I think that I look forward to seeing what comes out of this. I once saw a Caterham 21 on the road, by the way. It was at the Hammersmith Gyratory, of all places. bright orange, and I did a double take, really did. So yeah, but that was a long time ago, and of course, didn't get a picture, did I? Because it was long enough ago that I probably wasn't carrying an iPhone, and so the picture quality from my Nokia brick would not have been up to it. So yeah, that's one of my top car spots. That one. Keep your veer on. Let's do something really rare. So let's move on into points of interest now. So this week's lunchtime read is more of a lunchtime tour and a lunchtime browse. It is the online version of the Sir William Lyons Centenary Exhibition. It's from the Jaguar Heritage Trust. There's a link in the show notes to this, and what this gives you is an interactive, browsable view of the exhibition. You can you can see the video, you see the multimedia stuff, you can admire the exhibits, you can read all the text. It's really beautifully presented, and well worth your time, and well worth a bit of a browse. And it starts right off from Swallow Sidecars in Blackpool, right the way through. The sort of the saloons E-type and on. So really interesting, really well worth some of your time. List of the week this week comes from Top Gear magazine. It comes from friend of the show, Alex Goy, who obviously, and this is our only nod to the coronation as well. It's 10 alternative cars for King Charles III's coronation procession, and it runs through some of the people who were in the procession, and some of the royals, and what kind of vehicles they could have chosen instead. Which would I have? Ooh, tough. I think I would be. I would be taking down Princess Anne for rugby tackling her for a chance to try the Vanquish shooting brake, which is on the list there. Obviously, she's synonymous with a certain shooting brake British vehicle, which shall not be named, and yeah, so this makes a lot of sense for that. So yeah, and that's what I would have. Yeah, have a little bit of a look through, because Alex says some of the choices are suitably off the wall. Some of them they might even own already, to be perfectly honest, in at least one case. But yeah. Which brings us to finally, and this is an absolute cracker. So yeah, thanks to Andrew for finding this particular one. It is on YouTube, and it's from the BBC archive, and it's 3 minutes 50 something of driverless cars and the future of motoring, presented in a suitably 1971 and BBC RP manner. And they're at the Road Research Laboratory in Berkshire, which is now TRL, isn't it? Thatcham, I think. It's probably now Thatcham. Yes, it's talking about basically road tolling, and charging per mile and stuff, and sort of tracking which cars are where. They also talk about, and this one I really liked, were experiments about how to board the Channel Tunnel, and could people drive happily through essentially long, narrow tunnels, which are buildings which are basically pretending to be Channel Tunnel carriages, and how quickly can they, what's the best boarding process, what's all these things. They're trying all this stuff out in 1971, stating that, of course you should be able to take the tunnel from 1978, which didn't turn out to be the case. I think that's at least 15 years too early. I forget when the Channel Tunnel opened. But yes, but even back then, and when you look at the buildings that they've put up, these temporary buildings, that you think, no, that actually from the inside, that looks a lot like a Channel Tunnel carriage. 20 odd years earlier. Last but not least, of course, there's a little bit about driverless cars, because everybody has to talk about driverless cars. And it shows if you think that on-vehicle radar is a bit bulky and obvious nowadays, just wait till you see what they've strapped to the front of this Cortina. And yes, it's being pointed out to me that they are about as accurate now in the predictions about driverless cars as they were in 1971. And yeah, no comment. So yes, but that's really, I mean, that's 3.5 minutes of your time. Well worth it. It's great for its obvious Britishness in its presentation, and also just what was being done and thought about, and how you can relate that to what's happening now, or what still hasn't happened yet. That's pretty much it. As I said, hopefully I will not be just sitting here talking to myself next week. So much easier to speak to someone else rather than just myself and the camera here. But between now and next week, you can give us any feedback and share your thoughts with the show at Motoring Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, on Facebook, and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon, and please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Best way to get in touch with me is to use Twitter, where I'm at AJP Bradley. Same on Mastodon as well. And similarly for Andrew, best way to get in touch is to search for Cracked Windscreen on Twitter and Mastodon. We'll be back very soon, but until then, I've been Alan Bradley. The sort of text that's occasionally appeared on my screen, has been Andrew Clues. And in the meantime, safe motoring.